In 1856, the Heraclean earthquake struck the northern coast of Crete, and its devastating shockwaves were felt all across the hellfront of Anatolia, the Levant, and North Africa, wiping hundreds of settlements from the map in a single night of terror. 100-foot-high waves surged across the Mediterranean, causing untold devastation before being funneled into the Gulf of Alexandretta, where by the time it drew near the town of Darthall, the wave was 1,000 feet high. Its people gathered on the shore to witness their onrushing doom, praying for God to save them. And then, a miracle. The townsfolk watched in astonishment as the wave slowed and eventually halted half a mile from the shoreline, a titanic wall of water held back by the power of the Almighty. The water foamed and seethed like a beast denied its prey, and when the wave retreated back to the deep ocean, a rocky landscape strewn with half-devoured corpses and the debris of faraway lands was revealed. On the exposed seabed, the people of Darthall discovered an ancient temple of such strange form and unnatural scale that most would not dare approach for fear of their mortal souls. It lay canted at a strange angle, ripped from unknown foundations and carried on a great slab of greenish-black stone no quarryman could name. Those reckless few who dared explore the ruins found a great obelisk of the same greenish-black stone that resembled a serrated tooth, but one of such scale that it could not possibly be from anything living. All could feel the power emanating from the stone and fell to their knees before what must surely be a gift from God. Before the waters returned, the obelisk was dragged from the temple and set within a hidden sea cave, becoming known as the altar of Leviathan, a holy wonder that was never spoken of in the presence of outsiders. In the years that followed, no matter how the fighting against hell waxed and waned, Darthall was spared the fire and fury of battle, with the forces of the faithful and the damned seemingly all but blind to its presence. In thanks for this great mercy, votive offerings were made at the foot of the altar, food and wine, gold and livestock, for it seemed that the power that had saved them from the tsunami was still potent and ever hungry. But in 1871, the heretic submarine, Congregant of Mammon, surfaced just offshore, and armoured killers marched towards the town with murder in their hearts. In desperation, the townsfolk once again turned to the altar, this time offering the most profane sacrifices of their own flesh and blood in return for salvation. No one speaks of that night now, but when the submarine's carcass was discovered drifting out by the easternmost tip of Cyprus, it was little more than a gutted hulk, its crew missing and its internal bulkheads painted crimson with their blood. Today, Darthall still stands untouched by the horrors of war, and as they have done on the darkest night of each year, the townsfolk lay yet another unspeakable sacrifice upon the altar before hastily retreating to their homes, where every other door is painted with strange symbols none can remember learning and sealed fast with iron nails. On that dreadful night, strange fogs wreathe the town, and the muffled tread of heavy, wet footfalls can be heard on the cobbles outside. Fearful men and women cower at their cold hearts, hoping those beyond will keep walking. But with every sunrise, one home stands empty, the living souls who once occupied it taken by unknown captors and never seen again. Okay, so a really cool lore drop this week, focusing in on a place called Darthall. This is all connected to the Carcass Front and explicitly kind of talks about a shrine, the altar of Leviathan. Now, there's some really kind of fun, open to interpretation stuff at this point, but before we get too deep into that, I do want to highlight how interesting and fun the lore drops in the run-up to Carcass Front are likely to be. We know that Carcass Front really zooms in on a small geographical area and hopefully allows us to do things like this, which is take a close look at individual places, communities, elements of societies and cultures and infrastructures, and how they exist within the world of the Trench Crusade, and how this sudden arrival of interest, basically due to the Carcass Front fighting kicking off, impacts their lives. I'm just really excited, basically, to go in a little deeper. So for those who don't know, the 1856 earthquake, that's real. That really happened. In Trench Crusade, I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that this is being tied into the freeing of Leviathan. As Leviathan frees itself, it potentially causes this big earthquake. And of course, then it instantly goes like kind of hunting for food. Now, where it gets interesting for me is that it can be open to two different interpretations with regards to Darthall. You have this big wave rushing straight at it, and the people of Darthall are praying to God to save them. And maybe God does. Maybe the miracle is real. It's a genuine, legitimate miracle, divine intervention, straight from the Almighty himself, who stops this wave and forces it back. That's why I really like the line, "The water foamed and seethed like a beast that denied its prey," as if it was Leviathan itself, right, traveling through the water, causing this tremendous wave, and stopped by God. A battle of wills, basically, between, very much echoing that story of creation, right, where God mastered Leviathan and locked it down in the sea. Where that kind of falls apart for me is you have to wonder why God wouldn't do it again. Just like, oh, you got out, here you go, get back in your box. The other kind of way to do it is that Leviathan, like most other creatures within the realm of Trench Crusade, values belief, right? They like things, believing in them. They like that usurping of faith and the concept of loyalty, and this pantomime upon hearing this prayer and knowing that they were praying to God and pretending like it was God stopping them, when really it was just Leviathan itself deciding, you know what, this can be the start of my return in earnest, right? Because Leviathan is coming back into this game that has been played since the start of creation. It was locked up. Nobody came to help it, right? I'm not saying that Leviathan is a neutral party. I dislike the word neutral party when it comes to, as if it has no investment in whether heaven or hell succeeds. I imagine it feels great contention for the God that has trapped it and locked it away. But that doesn't mean it doesn't also feel hatred for whatever it is it feels like hell represents. So neutral, no. Directly invested in the potential destruction of both other parties, yes. That would be my current reading as to what Leviathan might be feeling and thinking upon its release. So it knows there's a war at play, and it is going to need believers and followers the same as everything else. And this is where it starts. It starts with Darthall. So the people of Darthall find this big old tooth, basically, from the description. And they're like, okay, this is cool. Let's take it home for reasons unknown. Why would you do that? Why would you suddenly decide that this thing was holy? Why would you suddenly decide that this thing was something that you should drag back to your town? Probably because you're under the influence of a massive primordial power. Maybe. So they do that. They drag it back home. And they're like, okay, cool. Now we're just going to like worship it because it kept us safe. And they are kept safe for quite a time. Right? They just have to do a couple of offerings. It talks about livestock and things of that nature, food and wine and gold. And they just like leave that at the altar and everything is hunky-dory. Until stuff gets real. Until the heretic submarine, the congregant of Mammon, shows up. What I really like about using that specific name is the implication, which I've been trying to kind of get across and explore myself a little bit in the setting is that people are complicated, and heretics will also be complicated. Naval raiders can be naval raiders, and they can also be loyal to Mammon, right? There's no reason why you can't run a naval raiders list and do them all up in golden finery. You know, you can like mix and match your visual themes and your rules. There's nothing to stop you doing this. You can do whatever you want. That's the joy of the game. And this kind of plays into that a little bit. So they show up. The townsfolk once again turn to the altar, but this time the sacrifices that they're making are described as profane. So it's their own flesh and their own blood in return for salvation. And once they do that, that's it. The town is cooked, basically. It's now become Yarnum. Once a year, you've got this element of sacrifice where everybody knows that there's going to be sacrifice, but they all just kind of hope it's not them. Basically, where they do the offering and they go home and they do whatever they can to keep the enemy out of their homes, and they're writing these sigils in languages that they don't even remember learning. And that concept of intrusive knowledge, of knowing things that you should never and can never know, is a repeating theme in good eldritch horror. That suddenly you're just like aware of something. You've gained knowledge, to use the Bloodborne term, because I'm a huge Bloodborne fan and I can't get kind of past the concept of Yarnum here. Insight. You have developed insight into something, secrets of existence that you should never know. And one house is emptied out. What's kind of fun to me is the heavy, wet footfalls can be heard on the cobbles outside. That could be a lot of things. I've seen people online hoping that we get some kind of like Aqua faction, basically, who's loyal to Leviathan. And that feels unlikely, just based off the fact that we're expecting to have about 12 factions in the whole game. And then within those factions, there'll be sub-factions. So actually, maybe we do. I doubt it'll be some kind of weird fish people, though. Basically, I doubt it'll be kind of that level of whatever. I think it's just the families. I think there's lots of towns like Darthall all around the coast who have brought home elements that Leviathan kind of tricked them into taking back, thinking that they were being protected, when actually it's basically just dragging a poison into the heart of your society, and before you know it, everything's becoming twisted and corrupted, and you're taught you were praying to God, but you're actually praying to Leviathan. And the proof of the pudding is that you were kept safe and you were protected. So by the time you realize exactly what you've been doing, it's too late, because you're already a beneficiary of what's occurring. Now, I did see somebody on Reddit describe Leviathan as benevolent, and I think that's a cracked view to take. You have to just not know what the word benevolent means if you think Leviathan is benevolent in any sense here. It appears to be creating its own like secret society of worshippers through fear and entrapment, and putting itself in a position where it can be able to make some sort of power play, right, against the established order of things. And because it's fresh in the game, essentially, if my theory that the 1856 earthquake really was it breaking its chains and finally freeing itself, then it needs to play catch up on both the forces of hell and the faithful to stand a chance of not just getting like insta-wiped, basically, in its attempts to do anything or be anything or have any say in how all of this plays out. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm really hoping that this will inspire some fun board builds from people. I love watching people build boards. It's not something that I'm particularly skilled at myself, but I love watching people do it. And some kind of like weird town upon the sea that's also eldritch as shit board build would be really kind of groovy to watch. If anybody wants to do that on YouTube, feel free. I'll give you a watch. And yeah, just overall, I really like this kind of zooming in of the lore and exploring stuff at a more microcosm of things. Now, I do feel like people will need to prepare themselves for the idea that not everything that's explored here will have a huge knock-on impact on the game, nor will it lead to playable faction or anything like that. Like, the developers and the community needs to be able to explore the world in a much kind of more focused and narrow sense than just what kind of model does this give me to play and how does this affect the tabletop. That's not how world building should work. To be honest, that's just called doing fucking product descriptions. The team will need to be able to broadly explore things that might not pay off with regards to a model or an in-game faction or something to actually impact the tabletop side of things until 4, 5, 6 years from now, because otherwise the lore only exists as a function of the consumerist side of the product. And you got to be able to separate those two, I feel, to be able to develop a fun and interesting game. And I think it would be a big shame if that were to happen with Trench Crusade, and it would be an even bigger shame if the community were somehow to want that to happen with Trench Crusade. But anyway, I'm once again blathering because it's the weekend and I'm not working and I don't really know what to do with myself. And so I will let you go. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to subscribe only if you like what I do. If it's your first time watching the channel, like the video only if you actually like the video. If you want some cool ass Mammon shit, check the description below. Follow the link over to my collab with Creature Crusade, the fine folks at Creature Caster. We're doing some fun shit. And this year's model is going to be hype, and you'll be seeing all about that next week. So, all the best.